Welcome everyone back to That's a Tap with my main man DJ. How are you, DJ?
Good, thanks, CT. What's good? What's news? What's happening down your end?
All's well, all's well. Thanks everyone for tuning in again. Episode 6 after a big pay-per-view, UFC 272. And sorry we're late to the party. We had a few schedule conflicts this week, but we could not come in and talk about this pay-per-view. Did you catch the main event?
Oh, CT, where do I start? I think it was a really good main event. Um, Sort of what everyone expected, what we expected as well. I think we sort of touched on it on the preview show. The fight could go one or two ways, and it went one of the two ways we predicted. I think it was a one-sided shutdown from Colby Covington. I thought it was a well-rounded performance. I enjoyed the fight. I thought it was a really good fight. I think the fight got fight of the night. I I thought that was a good call. I saw there was a little bit of hate towards the fight as well. Like some people weren't. Maybe they were diehard Masvidal fans, and whenever Masvidal's involved, you expect these flash knockouts. Maybe they were expecting that, and they were disappointed. But before we get into the fight, what were your thoughts on the main event?
Yeah, I think it was nice. DJ, like competitive, good. Overall, not an excellent card, but it was a nice card.
Yeah,
And we saw some action, which is first and
yeah,
foremost for me. Like as a fight fan, you just want to see action. We
yeah.
saw a couple starches, couple people put to sleep.
Mm.
So yeah, I think it was nice. It was entertaining.
Yeah, yeah, I agree. Actually, I mean, look, following 271 is a tough act. It was an insane card with all those fights they had lined up there, and then UFC 272 when you got a name like Masvidal at the top, the expectations already through the roof, right? Not many people get to headline a pay per view with no belts involved, unless you're named Conor McGregor, or Nate Diaz. So I think Masvidal was in that sort of um, stardom. But we'll talk a little bit later. How much this fight has affected that. But you know, when you have a fight of that magnitude and with the likes of Masvidal, Colby, um, you do expect fireworks. A lot of focus is on that main event. So maybe in the manner in which the fight turned out was not what a lot of people expected. And also, like the card, the card as a whole was a good card. There were good fights, but it just didn't have. Maybe you can argue it didn't have that spark that you expect in a card. Um,
Yeah,
but look, what did you think of Colby's performance?
yeah, it was immaculate. Precision. He did what I expected. Like we talked about. You remember when you asked me, DJ, in the preview, you said who's looked like the better fighter coming in,
Yeah,
you know, and
yeah,
we both agreed. Like Colby, whilst he's taken some losses,
yeah,
he looked better in his losses than
yeah,
Masvidal did in his losses. He was getting put to sleep, was Colby was losing by decisions.
yeah. I agree. I agree. I think the two losses Colby's had in the recent past were to the champion and the pound for pound number one, Kamaru Usman. And when he himself, Kamaru Usman's getting on the mic, and when questioned, is talking about potentially wanting to fight Colby again the third time because the competition was so high level. I mean, there's 50% of the population can argue that he won that fight, and they do, right? So he himself, I think, in one of the fan Q and A's asked that. So I agree with you. I think while they both lost to the champion and have two losses each, obviously Colby. I guess there's no other way to say it, but Colby lost in a better way, right?
Yeah,
Uh, Look, Colby did. Colby fought a great fight. I thought, we knew his cardio is insane, and he keeps an insane pace, and he did that in this fight as well, from start to finish. It felt like he was getting better as the fight went. I think the fifth round was the strongest, and he was relentless. You know, uh, he wasn't just taking Masvidal to the ground and just laying on him. He was doing work. He was showing relentless pressure, and whenever they broke, he was exchanging strikes. And that for me was the biggest surprise, to be honest, because everyone was sort of outlining, when you look at the wrestling aspect, obviously Colby Covington that was his strength. But when it comes to the striking element, Masvidal clearly had the edge, and that was the expectation going into the fight. But for me, what was really surprising was how good Colby was in the stand-up department, in exchanging strikes with someone of the caliber of George Masvidal. I think
Yep.
I personally, and this is my opinion, happy to be corrected, but I didn't see Masvidal pose any threat in that striking department, bar that second and fourth round when he had Colby wobbled a bit. Even then, he failed to capitalize that, which in hindsight he's probably thinking was a mistake, because if he had capitalized, if he had pounced on that opportunity, maybe we're looking at a different winner. We're looking at Masvidal having finished Colby, but that wasn't the case. And then in every other part, I actually thought Colby got the better of the striking exchanges. There was a point in the fourth round, I believe, if I'm not wrong, where there was like a 10-punch combo. It put him against the cage, and he was just unloading, and then he just goes straight down to try to take him down again. And it's just that insane pressure that we talk about, that Colby brings. It just makes you wonder what a good fighter he is. Honestly, the pound for pound ratings came out today, and I'm genuinely surprised that Colby is not in that list. I think
Yep.
he's clearly in that top 15 fighters in the UFC. They're obviously in that list. They're only considering the UFC fighters at the moment. So he's clearly in that top 15. So it just baffles me how he's not being included. Obviously, it is a list put together by the media, and we know that he's not very kind towards the media. So I don't know how much of that emotions take part in him not being included in that, but I don't think that should be the case. I think it should be just based on skills. And based on skills, I think Colby is as good a fighter as you get. Good on stand up, good with his wrestling, well rounded, insane pressure, great gas tank. What more can you want in a fighter? And constantly evolving, constantly getting better, right? Uh, So I think the fight was a complete shutdown. Apart from one judge, everyone else gave every single round to Colby, and there was one judge, I believe, who gave the second round to Masvidal. Which in when I scored it, I had all 5 rounds for Colby, and on verdict, we saw a strong scoring towards Colby. It was 5 strong rounds, with the fifth round being the strongest. So yeah, look, there was not. It was just a one-sided beatdown, to be honest. It was a shutdown, a complete shutdown, and Colby, establishes himself again as a very strong contender in that welterweight division.
Yeah, like you said, he's a polarizing figure, which is why
Hmm.
I think he's not getting that popularity
Yeah,
like you touched on.
yeah,
Just like we look at wrestling, is in
hmm.
entertainment wrestling. There's villains, that
Yeah.
that that
The
that that
heel,
that
the
yeah
heel.
that play up to the crowd, and you need them obviously, but
Yeah,
they're not really they're not the people's champ type.
yeah, yeah. No,
Um,
I agree. Um, But I was also like, I don't know if you noticed it, but the crowd was getting behind Colby a lot as well. Even towards the end of the fight, especially in that post-fight octagon interview, you saw the crowd maybe slightly, not very obviously, but in a slight manner booing Masvidal a little bit as well.
yeah,
Uh,
yep.
Here's a question for you, CT. Uh, how do you reckon? Because Colby always seems quite fresh after a weight cut. Like he's always probably one of the first few to step onto the scales come weigh-in day. He seems to always, look good on when weighing in and during that weight cut. Do you think he cuts a lot of weight before the fight?
Yeah, good question. To be honest, he always looks pretty in shape. I think
Hmm.
I don't think he would cut too much from what my eyes see.
Yeah.
What do you think?
No, I agree. I feel like maybe Colby's natural weight's not as high as some of the other welterweight contenders, right? I feel like maybe 190, right, or even lower than that, 185 or something, and he only cuts a little bit because the
Mm.
weight cut plays a big part too. Again, I don't know. Maybe it was just
Yep.
in my eyes, but I thought I saw Masvidal a little bit more fatigued after that weight cut when he stepped on the scales, not the ceremonial one, the actual weigh-in. But Colby
Yep.
was, as always, all smiles, pretty confident, hits the weight mark with no issues. And he's one of those fighters who does actually fight in his natural weight class. We see that conversation happening a lot, where fighters tend to cut down a lot more than their natural weight to have that slight advantage of being heavier come fight night, right? So, uh, we sometimes see people who are quite heavy, the 180s, 190s, sometimes cutting to 155, and then come fight night they're like 170, 180, which gives them obviously that advantage on the ground
Mm.
because they can wear down on their opponent. So I just don't think that's the case with Cole because I definitely think that plays a big part in his performance because that helps him maintain that gas tank because he's not depleting himself before the fight. Um,
Yep.
did you happen to catch the the post fight drama inside the octagon after the fight finished?
I didn't see. No, I didn't see all of it. Just
Yeah.
fill us in.
Oh, well, you missed out because there was as soon as the fight ended, like a part of me, I knew the animosity was maybe it wasn't sort of fabricated, it was real. But I thought maybe they'll shake hands, for all time's sake, for being training partners' sake. Fight ends, just before the buzzer. Colby's raining down, ground and pound. Buzzer. Herb steps in, separates them, and then Masvidal gets up. Is clearly fatigued, obviously, but they're both, mouthing at each other. So they literally spent 25 minutes in that cage, and then Colby's going at George, and the security steps in. Obviously, the security was a lot more prepared this time. I don't think they wanted a repeat of Khabib Conor happening. So there was a lot of security there, but there was no love lost at the end. They didn't squash that beef, and even in the post fight interview, and Colby's always quite Colby always has the choicest words. So yeah, it was clear they didn't squash that beef. But
Yep.
look, on that night, Colby was the better fighter without a doubt. Right, he dominated in every department, in my opinion, not just the wrestling. And you need to make note of how fatigued George felt towards or appeared towards the end of the fight. He looked very fatigued. Even I think third, fourth, and fifth rounds. It didn't see. And the surprising fact, if I'm not mistaken, is that he did have a full camp. So not sure if anything went wrong there, but obviously was fatigued. Even when Joe Rogan was interviewing him at the end, he was short of breath. Look, maybe it was too fresh in his mind at the time, but George was saying, "Oh, look, I lost in the wrestling department." Look, yes, obviously Colby dominated the wrestling department, but I feel like even the striking department, Colby had that slight edge post fight. Um, we definitely have to talk about that, especially round four when uh, George had him wobbled. George had
Oh.
Colby wobbled. I was very surprised that he didn't go for that the finish, go for the kill, and because
Yep.
obviously, I mean, he would have known that he's clearly losing the fight, so just go for the finish and give it everything you got. But I was surprised when he didn't chase that, and Colby obviously, and what a chin Colby has. He recovered. He gets wobbled, goes down on one knee, and pops back straight up, and he's in Masvidal's face, pressuring him again. And that's the type of fighter Colby is. Man, whether you like him or hate him, you've got to respect Colby Covington
Mm.
as a fighter. And and I know Masvidal said like he was being more cautious, and that's why he didn't go for the kill. He was expecting Colby to shoot, and he was ready to defend that. Maybe look, that's always a challenge fighting a wrestler, right? When you got an amazing wrestler who's a decent striker, that risk is always there because you never know when they will shoot. So you're always expecting and anticipating that shot, right? So you're waiting for the takedown where you leave yourself exposed or you sort of frozen. and that's sort of the latter's what happened. I feel, uh, but also the gas tank as well. I think uh, Masvidal was fatigued to go for that kill. I feel like we know George Masvidal has that killer instinct, and he always chases that. But in this instance, unfortunately, he chose to do something else. I mean, that's that. The fight's wrapped. Colby Covington prevails supreme. And now we've got to look onwards and see what's next. I mean, what do you think's next for George Gamebread Masvidal?
That's probably the toughest one out of the two. Um, in terms of competition, we'd probably love to see him, do a BMF title again.
Hmm.
That's how he can get his shine back out there, get his name back up. That's the lure, because the lure of like your sort of contention fights is diminished for Gamebred now. I feel like, he's been knocked out by Usman convincingly. He's been
Yeah,
shut out completely by Covington. He's clearly not in the top two, in welterweights now. So he probably needs a star-studded fight in terms of your like BMF, again, just to
yeah.
get that cachet back. What do you think?
100%. I agree. I couldn't have said it any better because I think we spoke a little bit before at the start. We said, look, not many people can headline a card without a belt involved, right? And then Masvidal was in that league, but how much has this fight impacted that? And if I were to answer that question, I would say it has actually impacted it quite significantly. And the reason being is what you touched on. When you've been definitively defeated by the current champion in a devastating knockout, and then also losing a grudge match where pretty much a lot of people had their eyes on. In again a very one-sided fashion, it does impact your star power. Um, and then you got to then factor in as well, like that how much weight does that BMF belt carry now? Do you get what I mean? Like
Yep.
I think he's ranked
Yeah.
number 7 in the welterweight division, right? His last 3 fights, he's won maybe one of his last 4 fights, if I'm correct. He's definitely lost
Yep.
the last 3 because it was to Usman twice and then now Covington, right? How much weight does that BMF belt carry now, right? Like it doesn't even make sense when you got two people who dominated him, and then you put the belt up. Would people value that? Like, what's the value there, right? And let's not forget the BMF belt in the first place was not won in a very definitive fashion as well. I did think Masvidal was winning and he was dominating Nate Diaz, but with Nate Diaz, you never know, right? In the later rounds, he always steps back up.
Yep.
Uh, I think, look, there's a few options still for Masvidal. There is the Nate Diaz fight. It can go back. I mean, if you're going to put up the BMF belt, which I think it needs to be involved, because
Mm.
I just don't think you can justify Masvidal and the belt and headlining a card, right? Um, so but you throw in a name like Nate Diaz in there, then the BMF belt, right? We never had a proper end to that fight, so let's two fan favorites again. People would people will tune in, and that's sort of one way to bring it up. But you need to also be mindful. I think the UFC especially will be very mindful to get some winnable fights for Masvidal as well. They'll be very smart around that. The reason being they've just signed another multi-fight deal with him, and I heard somewhere that they said he's the third highest paid actor now. Sorry, the third highest paid fighter. I beg your pardon. Right, I feel like every pay per view there's a new fighter is coming up as like the third or fourth highest paid. Last UFC card it
Yeah.
was easy. He signed a new deal and he was the second highest paid fighter. So it seems like the UFC is starting to be a little bit more generous.
Well,
Just a quick.
what do you think about, speaking of bigger names, if it's not Diaz, like, yeah,
I
two
know what you're gonna suggest.
two
I think
two
I know what you're
dudes, yeah, it's coming.
gonna.
They never faced off yet.
Yep, yep. I agree. I think is that. Are you talking about the highest paid fighter in the UFC?
Yep.
Oh, Is he a one Irishman?
Yep.
Yeah, look, that fight will sell. I'll tell you that, right? I don't know what it is about Conor McGregor. He could. I'm not saying this because I'm a fan, but it's just he could lose a few fights and his star power is still there. I think what he achieved
Mm.
to get rise to that stardom is set in stone, and I think that's what contributed towards people still being attracted towards that star power.
Mm.
That's
Yep.
why you don't see Conor McGregor's star power diminish, right? Because what he did to rise to stardom is a little bit different to what the likes of Nate Diaz and Masvidal did. I mean, Nate Diaz, while he was a fan-friendly fighter, he rose to superstardom after fighting Conor McGregor,
Mm.
right? The same thing, and if Khabib was still in the mix, he'll be one of those fighters, another like one of those superstars, right? Again, while he was a dominant fighter, a great fighter, a lot more eyeballs on him and a lot more popularity after that Conor McGregor fight. So look, with Masvidal it was a bit different. Like he had that stellar 2019, right, and then it seemed to have gone downhill from there. So people don't have too much to cling on to, right?
Mm.
Is this one fighter who's been fighting from the streets to the fight? He's a true fighter, right? An inspiring story, but like in terms of stardom, yeah. Look, man, that's a good fight, but then again, I guess putting myself in the UFC shoes, I'm looking at one guy I've signed a multi-fight deal with, and then I've got this megastar in Conor McGregor. Both are having a skid, right? So if I put them together, I know that one person's going to lose. Yes, we can have a nice build-up. That press conference will be through the roof, insane. Uh, Probably will be a massive pay-per-view. But is that killing, is that killing the duck that lays the golden egg, right? Because either one loses, it's in the long run, it's going to impact the UFC, right? Because obviously they clearly don't want McGregor losing one more.
Mm.
Again, it'll start becoming a bit hard to market that. And Dana White saying things like, oh, McGregor can come back and step right into a title fight. So the more he loses, the more that becomes more difficult, right? And look, we know this. If Conor McGregor's champion, it's good business for the UFC. Let
Mm.
more eyes, a lot of so they wouldn't risk wanting him to lose. Then again, do you want the guy who's just signed a multi-fight deal to lose? Again, another superstar, but a higher risk of
Yeah.
falling off that pedestal, right? So it's a tricky thing, but as a fight fan, I'd love to see that fight. I think they're both similar styles, great stylistic fight. They're both going to strike, right? It's going to be. I just think size doesn't make it. There was a lot of talk about Masvidal's bigger. I don't think so. I just don't think Masvidal's big. I think they're fine, like especially with the new size Connor's foot. But again, leg injury, is that the fight for Connor to come back to? You know what I mean? I know the Nate Diaz fight's sort of lurking around as well for Connor. So
Mm.
we don't know. But again, definitely an option. Definitely a fan friendly fight. I just hope they don't do Masvidal. It says it's clear Leon Edwards is going to fight for the title, most likely in June or July. Uh, let's say, for argument's sake, he loses that title fight to Kamaru Usman, right? Then Leon Edwards is coming off a loss. Masvidal said, "I need some time to, work on things. I'm going to go fix a few things." Uh, the timing would align for a Leon Edwards Masvidal fight, and they have that storyline ready, the famous three
Mm.
piece soda. But again, it's just going to further impact Masvidal. I think it'll be a very similar fight to what we saw between Colby and Masvidal. Leon is a similar fighter, a pressure fighter, a technical striker, right? But maybe even slightly a better striker than Colby, right? And he's got good ground game as well. I just don't see that ending well for Masvidal. So if they were to do that again, it could be that one fight that'll generate interest, but then Masvidal's power goes down further, star power goes down further. So let's hope they don't go that way. I mean, maybe you
What
can set
about
him up. Yeah, go.
maybe a name we've forgotten about? Gilbert Burns.
Yeah, look, Gilbert's got a big fight coming up with Hamzat, right? Mark my words, right? I'm excited for that fight because the big question, and I have this question just like everyone else: is Hamzat the real deal? From what we have
Mm.
seen, from seeing his training footage, we can see, yep, he is. But we want to see that. We want to see him take on a top contender. And Gilbert Burns is as high as it gets, right? He
Yep.
lost to Usman, came back and beat Wonder Boy, and then there you go. But yeah, if Gilbert loses that fight, then it's a good fight to make. Again, a tough fight for Masvidal. Maybe someone like a Stephen Wonderboy Thompson who's coming off a couple of losses himself, right?
Yep.
You know, he's another striker, sort of maybe, you know, not in his prime at the moment, right? A reasonable fight for Masvidal. I believe Masvidal lost the last time they both fought,
Mm.
so it'll be a good fight, a good storyline, right? And you know, that's the fight they could set up as well. But would you agree with me if I said like Masvidal's dream of being a champion probably has come to an end now? Like I can't see him rising the ranks again to fight for the title against Masvidal, against Usman, because
Yep.
he's
Yeah.
got a line of killers to fight, right?
Yeah. He had, and all the credit to him. He's earned. You mentioned that deal. It's no doubt
Yeah.
been the highlight of his career in terms of fighting high-profile fights.
Mm.
Backyard fighter. We're all aware of Masvidal's come-up story,
Yeah.
but that last year and a half where he's fought the Connor, he's fought the foot stomping. Remember the foot
Yeah.
stomping first fight, and then the one when he got knocked out. Like
Yeah.
he put himself right there, and he had that chance, but he'll always look back, and that was the height of his career. I
Mm.
feel like he just couldn't hang with the best, at the critical period. There was just a better fighter of this time.
Yep. Yeah. It's sad, but it's true, and I agree. He just couldn't, to deal with the upper echelon of that welterweight division, right? So, and I feel you look at anyone in the top five, I feel like you're looking at the same result for him. Then we got the winner, Colby Covington, right? So we have Colby now. Colby finds himself in a very similar situation to Robert Whittaker in the middleweight division. Beats everyone else who's put in front of him, but then you know had he just comes up short against the champion. Same thing with Colby. But Colby beats Masvidal in dominant fashion and then calls out Dustin Poirier in perfect Colby style. What did you think of that call out?
Yeah, I think
And
that was.
yeah, what do you think of that call out? And do you think that's a fight you'd like to see?
Yeah, absolutely. I think that's nice. Took me by surprise. Um, to be honest, I just think it'd be worthy of another title fight. Maybe not straight away, but like I know Kamaru is one, convincingly. But the fact that they're still young, and Kamaru, he can only keep beating who's in front of him. You just got to keep, like I said, not straight away, but you just got to keep making those fights again. Give Colby a chance.
Yep, I
Yeah,
agree.
because
I think
what el- yeah, what else can he do? He's winning so dominant. Yeah, like you said, everyone else. It's like Whitaker's lost to Izzy again, but like, what if he knocks off two or three more dudes, and does he get a chance again?
yeah,
Um,
yeah.
yeah,
Yeah, it's an interesting situation he finds himself in, and that's always the case, right? Like when you're beating all the other contenders, and but then you fought the champion twice. Where do you go from there, right? So that's why I thought there was a lot of hatred towards that call out, but I actually thought it was a good call out. I mean, Dustin Poirier said, I believe, after his fight with Oliveira that look, I can't keep doing this weight cuts, right? I'm looking at 170, right? If the thing is, because it's a fight that doesn't make too much sense if it's a one-off where Dustin's fighting at 170, right? It'll make sense if Dustin's stepping into the 170 picture with the intent
mm,
of going for the belt there,
yeah,
right? Or making a legitimate run. If that's the case, fighting Colby for Dustin makes a lot of sense. Colby is the number one welterweight at the moment, right? For
yeah,
Dustin stepping into that division and then taking on the number one guy makes a lot of sense for Dustin more than it makes sense for Colby. I think for Colby it was smart because he's realized, look, I've had a dominant win now. I've had this big fight. Let me fight another fight, the way I'm sort of in the safe zone because I would like to think he believes that he can beat Dustin, and with his skill set, Colby can beat anyone on any given day, right? So he's taking his chances there, but it's also low risk as well for him, right? He's a guy coming from a lower division. Um, uh, the other thing you could do with Colby is Colby waits and fights the winner of Hamzat and Gilbert, right? I believe if Gilbert Burns wins that fight against Hamzat, they will make the Colby and Gilbert fight, right?
Yeah.
To get the clear number one contender. But if Hamzat wins, UFC will do everything in their power, including denying Leon Edwards another shot so that Hamzat can fight for the
Uh,
title. But here's the thing, right? I'm going to be quite selfish here. I would love to see Hamzat and Usman fight. If Hamzat gets through Gilbert, I'd love to see that fight. The reason being, Usman's a class above the rest, right? He's shown that. Colby's the only one who's come close to beating him or having any sort of threat, right? Everyone else, it's been one-sided. Burns got knocked out. Masvidal got knocked out, right? Let's see how Leon Edwards fares, but, you know, I just think Usman is too good. But Kamsat's the mystery man, right? So and he's got the wrestling to tackle it, and his striking is really good, right? So this is a guy who trains with bigger guys, so he's used to pressure. Like another guy who doesn't get tired. He's insane, right? So
yep.
I'm actually excited to see that fight. Like I would pay double to watch that fight. So it's definitely a fan friendly fight. So cycling back, I think Colby Covington again. Like so, yeah. If Hamza were to win, I would say he'll fight Usman or the winner of Usman Edwards, right? But then again,
Yep.
Colby finds himself maybe fighting Gilbert, or Luque. He could fight the winner of Vicente Luque and Bilal Muhammad. So there, Bilal Muhammad is someone who's rising up the ranks quite rapidly as well, right? And then he's fighting Vicente Luque, and two top guys again fighting out to separate themselves as another clear contender. Whoever wins that, they could fight Colby to make that case. And the champion himself is coming out and saying the path to the championship goes through Colby Covington. Colby's still there. He's there. If you can beat Colby, then you deserve a title shot. So I've got to look. What do you think of a fight between Colby and Hamza? Would you be down to watch that?
Oh, absolutely. Yep. Like you touched on with Hamzat, you could tell the UFC desperately want him to be the next big young star,
Yeah.
Yeah, and they built that up. He had that hiatus, obviously, got his health right,
Yeah.
and he's back in, better than ever. And
Yeah.
there's all hopes that he'll be, like you said, in contention. And you got to make some narratives. Kamaru's been beating everybody,
Yeah.
so you've just got to, like you said, you got to create the next narrative, the next David versus Goliath type thing.
Yeah. Correct. Correct. And Hamzat's got all the right ingredients to beat. The question that's always come up is who's the next Conor McGregor, right? Who is going to be that person to then carry the company forward, take it to the next tier? Like Conor did what no one else had done. He came in and he transcended the sport. He took it to a different league, right? Well, the sport is where it is today because of his stardom and because of what he brought to the fight business, right? We all got to agree to that, right? So I think Hamzat is that next person. He's got all the right. He's winning fights. That's what Conor did at the early start of his career. While he was brash, loud-spoken, outspoken, right? He was also a great fighter. He was winning fights, not just winning fights. He was winning fights in an amazing and outstanding fashion. And people are like, who is this guy? He's coming and talking all this smack, and then he goes in and he just puts people away. Aldo in 13 seconds, right? And the double champ, first double champ. So all that, right? And we feel Hamzat's got that. Everyone, it's made everyone believe that, right? In the UFC for sure. So that UFC will have a lot of vested interest in Hamzat and his rise. So if he's able to beat, could you imagine that? If he can beat the pound for pound number one fighter and claim the welterweight belt, right? And he's made it no secret. He's fought at middleweight before. And you see another dominant champion in the middleweight division who hasn't been challenged before, and then all of a sudden now you're looking at Hamzat fighting Israel Adesanya for the middleweight title, right? And could you imagine the storyline if he were to beat both Usman and Adesanya and claim that belt and become the double champ? So it's a good storyline, but you never know how things turn out. But look, let's hope for the best. But welterweight divisions got interesting again. There's a lot of exciting
Mm.
fights in that division. I feel like in the next few months we'll have some clear indication on who the contenders are going to be. But I'm going to put money on Hamzat to be the next contender for Usman after Edwards.
Yeah, I can agree. Like you said,
Yeah,
he's the next big name they're trying to build up. He's got
yeah,
all the skills, all the talent in the world. He's finishing dudes in 10 seconds. He's a scary dude. He's built
yeah,
for it too.
yeah.
You could tell. He's got no fear, and one step at a time. I could see him, challenge for the welterweight, and then eventually middleweight.
Yeah. And he
Izzy's
loves
not
to
getting,
fight.
Izzy's not getting a challenge, and I think Izzy's focus, maybe after one more defense, Izzy's focus might start to tick towards the light heavyweight. He probably wants to build his legacy and make up for that loss to Jan.
Correct. I mean, look, again, another one thing that's missing from the decorated career of Israel Adesanya is that second championship. I think if he can add that to that, again, another superstar, a very talented fighter, amazing fighter, you know, definitely deserving of that champ status. I still want
Mm.
Adesanya to fight Giri Prohashka for the title. I'd love to watch that fight. So, talking of the middleweight division, did you see? There's some murmur going around that Robert Whitaker versus Marvin Vittori is being finalized for June.
Yep. Hey,
Yep.
I'm loving
So
that.
anytime Rob fights, I'm down to watch. An
Yep.
amazing fighter. But look, yeah, some good things to look forward to. Corey Main, UFC 272 core main event. It was meant to
Mm.
be Rafael dos Anjos versus Rafael Fisiev. Fisiev drops out due to COVID. They teased us with Islam Makhachev. I was praying to all the MMA gods, make it happen. Didn't happen, unfortunately. It would have been crazy for Islam to step in on short notice, beat a former champ, or fight a former champ, and then potentially, I think Islam probably beats him and beat him, and uh, solidify his legacy. But wasn't the case. Moicano steps in, Renato Moicano. I'll be honest, I wasn't too keen on this fight when it got announced. Maybe because of how the hype was built around Islam, and then Moicano stepping in looked like a bit of a downgrade. That man, I'll give you this. Moicano was tough as fuck. Right, I'll say
Yep.
it as it is. He was tough as fuck. Look, unfortunately, Big Tough doesn't really say anything, right? But he came for. He didn't. He could have just okay. Look, I weighed in. I'll come in. I'll collect a paycheck. Look, I'll fold in a couple of rounds, and I'm fine. I still made money. I didn't diminish my legacy because it was a short notice fight, 5 days. Uh, Someone said he just came just before the weigh-in. He landed because he was on a flight coming back. No, he didn't do that. He came forward, he pressed forward, and he fought. One judge even gave him the last round. And yeah, he did have his last round was the strongest round, but you shouldn't let that take away from the fact that RDA fought a very dominant fight, another one-sided fight in the core main. That fight should have been stopped. Like the referee's there to make sure that the fighter's not um, taking any further damage. I just don't think after the third round there was no way he was going to win, right? And there was while he did have a strong fifth round, but he wasn't going to come back and knock RDA out, which is what he had to do, or submit him to. I mean, I know crazy things have happened. You can never predict, but you know what I mean. Like the common sense would say like there was no way for Moicano to win, so you just stop that fight. Why I don't know why the corner didn't get involved. Stop the fight. Like you're not we see his stuff. Everyone's stuff. They're fighters. They step into the cage. Save the fighter. You don't want these people to get damaged. I don't think even RDA was sort of not wanting to cause any more damages. Well, I feel like I don't know where I heard this, but I did hear someone say it felt like RDA took the last round a little bit easy on Moicano because maybe he felt bad. A fellow Brazilian stepped in on short notice, saved the fight, made sure they both got paid, and then this guy's, his face was massacred. Right. So, and again, I don't know, also know why they didn't make it a 3-round fight. It was a short notice fight. What was the purpose of making it a 5-round fight? A lot of things didn't make sense. Props to RDA as well, man. Like, I mean, it's not easy taking a shot because always, whenever there's a short notice fight, people always talk about the person who steps in last minute. They fail to understand it's as tough for the person on the other side as well because they've been preparing for a completely different fighter. It's not because when in fight camps you prepare specifically, right? There are only a few things that you can do generic. Then after that, it becomes specific preparation. And if you look at Rafael Fiziev and Renato Moicano, they're two completely different fighters, right? So props to RDA to taking that fight and in 5 days as well and accepting it and then fighting and getting a dominant win.
Yep. Yeah, no, definitely. And respect to both. But yeah, like you said, Moicano really put his best foot forward, but he was just a fish out of water a bit,
Yep.
And I think he needs to get be a bit slower in his approach, his rise. But yeah, you don't blame a fighter for taking a big profile short
Yep.
minute last minute fight. And
Yep.
yeah. So
No,
that
yeah. Sorry, CT. You go.
what's next for RDA? Do you think?
Good question, right? Like, I mean, clearly he fought one of his best fights on over this past weekend. But again, can he hang with the top of the division? Again, that tends to be a question that seems that we need to wait to find out. Like, I would like to say probably not. Like, I can't see the Islam fight going his way. I can't see like the Benil Dariush or Michael Chandler or anyone sort of RDA beating anyone. A fight that was meant to happen that never happened. And I know we spoke about him when we were talking about what's next to someone else before, but he fits into this picture perfectly as well. I know there's a lot of talk about him coming back to a title fight. I don't know how practical that is, but this fight was meant to happen, before the Eddie Alvarez fight. Like, Conor McGregor was meant to fight RDA for the lightweight title, right? I was booked previously. They've gone back and forth. I think it's another style wise, again, a more favorable fight for Conor McGregor as well. And he tends to it'll be a good fight to come back as well because RDA is not in that top 5 or anything, but he's still a big name. I'd like to see that Conor McGregor fight maybe. I wouldn't even be too much against the Fiziev fight being rebooked because again, Fiziev's this upcoming star. Knocked out Brad Riddell in his last fight, and someone similar to Hamzat. People are waiting to see how good is he. Can he cope with the top end of the division? So again, RDA, good person to see, and especially the way he fought this last fight. RDA is still very much a very formidable opponent. So if you can beat RDA, you stake that claim and you get that top 5 spot, right? So yeah, I wouldn't be opposed to seeing the Fiziev fight either. What about you? What do you think's next for RDA?
Yeah, I think you touched the nail there. When a fighter's that dominant, you sort of got to think, okay, you got to give them a high profile, a great opponent, and this I'm surprised there's not been that much talk about what Conor's next fight would be. To come his welcome back fight.
So it is interesting. I mean, the lightweight division's always been interesting, always, right? And then you insert names like Conor McGregor, Tony Ferguson, Khabib, although no longer fights. It it's probably been one of the most exciting divisions for the UFC for a very long time. Dustin Poirier. Um, but yeah, yeah, you're right. But that makes me feel that the UFC is sitting back and watching. I think I actually like to say the UFC is very keen to make an Oliveira versus McGregor fight. I feel like they do. Um,
Mm, yeah.
it's always been that one big thing. I mean, Conor McGregor against Brazilian fighters has been it's always had this big build up. Oliveira's not so if Oliveira were to beat Justin Gaethje, while it'll be very unfair for a lot of people, I don't know if the UFC will make it. They might be keen to make it. They might say, look, we'll make it. They both want it. The fans love it. Just like Dana says, if the fans want it, we'll give it. Right. I don't know if you saw news broke out today. Chandler's fighting Tony Ferguson.
Yep.
I don't know if it's a. Oh man, I love Tony. I don't know if it's a good fight for Tony. I mean, I would have loved a rematch between RD and Tony maybe, but Tony Ferguson, Chandler, look, Chandler's in that spot now. While he's had some entertaining fights, he's clearly established himself as a top fighter, a fan-friendly fighter. He's had losses. He's lost to Oliveira. He's lost to Gaethje. While people love that Gaethje fight, we can't forget that he lost. Right. So
Yep.
can he afford to lose another fight? So we're definitely going to get a tuned in, Michael Chandler coming in to fight Tony Ferguson, and unfortunately, Tony Ferguson had losses himself, right? So I just didn't know. I don't know if it was the right fight for Tony, but again, the fight's made. If Tony were to beat Chandler, though, it puts him right back in the mix, right? And you were just asking about. No one's talking about a return fight for Conor McGregor, and Tony Ferguson, Conor McGregor, sign me up,
Oh,
sign me up, you know. Chandler McGregor, another fan-friendly fight, right? Conor McGregor is someone who will always have fights, man. As long as Conor
yeah.
McGregor wants to fight, he will have fights, and he will have fan-friendly fights, right? Uh, so,
I'm
yeah,
so,
look, I mean,
so surprised that they actually did given how bad Tony's looked recently, how they just gave him this high-profile fight. Um,
yeah, yeah, I was
you
very
know,
surprised.
maybe they do feel a little bit to blame for given, just fast forward or rewind a year and a half ago, he
Yeah,
was there. That fighter was due to fight Habib at
yeah,
um at Barclays, and he falls out, and
yeah,
then it starts a downward spiral for his career. You
yeah.
know,
And it's exactly what we spoke about before, taking short notice fights, and how sometimes the other fighter could be the one taking damage, right? And that look at
mm,
what happened to Tony Ferguson, right? He could have said no to Justin Gage, but look, Tony Ferguson, he's not the type to say no to fights, right? So he said yes. He fought Gaethje, obviously prepared for a completely different fighter in Habib, then fought Gaethje, lost to Gaethje, and then unfortunately since then it's been a downward spiral. Lost to Gaethje, lost to Oliveira, then lost to Beneil Dariush. But if you look at it, they're all in that top three in the UFC lightweight at the moment. So it is unfortunate for Tony from almost fighting for the title again in a dream matchup against Habib, which we never got to see, never will get to see, to
mm.
now sort of fighting for his career in a sense. Um, but look, the lightweight division is quite interesting. Let's see what comes next for RDA. Um, uh, 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 we also had one of your favorite fighters fight this weekend in Kevin Holland. What did you think of
Yep.
that fight?
Yeah, I'm happy for my guy.
Yeah,
Getting back, where
yeah,
where the momentum was starting before
mm,
before he ran into Vittori.
yeah,
Um, but yeah, I'm glad. It was a nice matchup for him. I think the UFC clearly want him to, given the fact that he's young. I think
yeah,
they clearly did a reset with him, and they said, "Oh, look, you really did stuff up your opportunity,
yeah,
with two big fights in a row that he fluffed." And
yeah,
I think they need to be strategic with him. He's not. I don't know if he'll ever be a star or superstar, but he'll always be that nice popular UFC fighter, I feel like that'll fill cards.
Yeah,
He'll
he'll
help
be.
fill main cards, but he may not ever be better than a co-main.
Yeah, I see what you mean. I think he's got all the right ingredients to be sort of a fan-friendly fighter. Someone like a Cowboy Cerrone, right?
Mhm.
Because obviously while Cerrone's challenged for the title, he's always been that person who people love to watch. Who you put him in a card and the card's value goes up a bit. Kevin Holland probably could be someone. And well, look, he could surprise us and he could fight for the title and he could win the title, right? You never know with this guy, but he's got some interesting rivalries with a lot of people. He's got this spat going on with Sean Strickland in the middleweight division. He had a spat with Hamza Chimaev, right? Who's in the welterweight division now, but obviously, like, I mean, he has a lot of catching up to do to get to Hamza Chimaev. But the Strickland fight's just there. If Kevin Owens can win a middleweight fight, and he's told the media he wants to fight at least 5-6 times, and he can't do everything in the welterweight division. So he wants to be able to shuffle between divisions. So he wants to do some middleweight fights too. So I think that Sean Strickland fight that'll be a good fight because he had some unfavorable matchups in the middleweight division. He fought Brunson, heavy wrestler, obviously lost, and then he took the short notice fight against Vittori, again lost, and then obviously the Dorcas fight as well. There was a headbutt, and he lost as well. That was a bit unfortunate though. But now he comes into the welterweight division. The UFC were kind enough to give him a really good opponent who matched his flair, right? And was who sort of matched that style too. And I was a bit surprised. I thought, oh no, when I was watching that fight, like, because Holland lost that first round, Oliveira was doing the right things, right? And then come second round, Holland resets, listens to his corner, comes back out, and then starches Oliveira in typical Holland fashion. I think, I mean, he loves the energy. He fights for fighting with fighting with fans in attendance. I think played a part as well. He's probably he got motivated there. But yeah, look, he's got a win now in the welterweight division, so it'll be interesting to see who they'll match him up with next.
Mm.
He called Cowboy Cerrone. Come on, Cowboy Cerrone. He's probably about to fight his last fight. Give Cowboy Cerrone a good fight. Send him off into the sunset. He deserves that. I don't think Kevin Holland should be the person
Yeah.
fighting through. But there's a few good people, like maybe someone who's coming off a loss, like a Michael Chiesa. He's still in the top 10.
Mm.
Or if
Yep.
you want to build Holland up slowly, like there's a few other options that
Yep.
that you can see in that welterweight division. So to really quickly touch on as well, we had another main card fight in Bryce Mitchell and Edson Barbosa. Bryce Mitchell again puts on a very dominant fight and wins the fight and establishes himself as a strong contender in that featherweight division with his camo shorts. It's a very if you follow him on social media, he's a very interesting character. Um, Whenever you have time, look up his. He did a commercial for a car retailer in his hometown. It's one of the funniest things you'll ever see. And Danawhite reposted it because it was that funny. He's just an interesting character, and I think if he does the right things and wins fights, I think we'll see a lot more of him.
Yep.
What else do we have in the main card? Mm, we had we had the Greg Hardy fight. Did you catch the
Yeah.
Greg Hardy fight?
Yeah.
Oh my god!
You got
Oh
pounded,
my!
ground and
Oh,
pound.
oh man! Oh
Disappointing.
man! Yes, Spivak just I would be very surprised if they don't cut Greg Hardy after this. Okay, it was interesting in the beginning. I know there was a
Yeah.
lot of controversy surrounding his personal life, but again, let's put all that aside. Let's look at it as a fight. It's a fighting. It's a sport, right? And he's a fighter. He comes in. It was interesting. Transitioning from football, a popular name. How will he fare? He won that contender series fight. He won a few of his first fights in the UFC, and everyone's like, okay, well, could be someone we can back. And then sort of things start start to go downhill, and he's been losing fights. Obviously, he lost
Yep.
to Bam Bam. There's no love lost between those two. Bam Bam still makes memes of him. Um, and then now, yeah, he obviously lost to Spivak in a very dominant fashion. He just got shut down, you know. I can't see him, stand with any of the top guys in the heavyweight division. Could you imagine Stipe, Stipe versus Greg Hardy? You could Stipe would take him to school, So yeah, look. But talking of which, did you hear the news? They're trying to make Stipe versus Bam Bam.
Oh, that I'd be in heaven if that was made.
Oh man,
Uh,
could you imagine that? Like, two
yep.
you could not find two opposite characters. Like Stipe is so very business-like, and then we got Bam Bam with all the color and the energy.
Yep.
It'll be an interesting fight, obviously. And no official announcement yet, but this talks about that fight too. We had Jamie Malarkey, an Australian fighter, take on Jalen Turner. Again,
Yep.
Jalen Turner, a sort of a rising prospect in that lightweight division. Everyone seems to be coming from that lightweight division. um, Obviously the feature prelim was again another pretty clean knockout. Very dominant again because he won the first round, comes back in and knocks him out. Very technical. So yeah, we had that. We had the Marina Rodriguez and the Yan Xiaonan fight. Very close fight. Could have gone either way. But sort of, I guess I'm glad Marina Rodriguez got it because I think she now sets herself up as that next challenger after Carla Esparza for Rose Namajunas. Right.
Mm.
Some interesting there. Uh, Another noteworthy fight was the fight between Marina and Maria, the Kazakh fighter versus the Ukrainian fighter. A lot of tension in Ukraine at the moment, and with what's going on, our thoughts to the people there, and hopefully things calm down there. But yeah, well,
Mm.
she fought with a lot of emotion. She was very emotional post fight. The crowd was involved, very supportive, cheered her. It was nice to see, and obviously she got the win. Um, yeah, it was like a decent card. Um, Action packed in places. Had some good fights. Uh, as always, UFC is good with putting good cards and keeping us glued to our screen. So they did that with this too. And we got to look forward to the next big card, which is UFC 273. Another card that hits home for us because we got our very own Alexander Volkanovski taking on the Korean
Yep.
Zombie. So that's a big card, big fight. Obviously, Volkanovski is another very underrated champion who's been destroying everyone who's been put in front of him, and it's not much. It doesn't. I feel he doesn't get the respect he deserves. He's quite high in the pound list, rightfully so. And I'm looking forward to that fight. Um, and then we got Aljo taking on Peter Yan. the grudge match everyone's been waiting for. Because obviously we all know what happened in that first fight, how everything transpired, and how Aljo got the belt, and now hopefully we get a definitive answer there, and we can break these fights down further in our preview show that we'll do. But it's also
Yep.
got that the big fight we've been talking about, which is Hamza Chimaev versus Gilbert Burns. I feel like that
Mm.
fight probably steals the show. I don't know what it is about Alexander Volkanovski. He always gets some high impact fights in his cards. Because the last time he fought Ortega, he had Nick Diaz versus Robbie Lawler, another massive fan friendly fight. So this time he's got Hamza and Gilbert fighting on his card. So some good card. Kelvin Gastelum comes back. He's fighting. Mackenzie Dern's fighting.
Mm.
Some big names. So Jairzinho Rosenstrike's coming back. So a pretty good card, a very good card. Looking forward to that. Any thoughts on UFC 273 from you, CT?
Like you touched on, fights like we predicted will come thick and fast, and a lot of fighters we haven't seen in action for a minute, and they're going to get their chance to shine. Rosenstrike, like you said, the heavyweight division's really intriguing to me now with Bam Bam, with Stipe's absence, with what happened with Francis dominating Garn, and Garn
Yep.
needing a soft fight to bounce back, and looking forward to seeing all that in action, and more. And we'll also be look out for the show, previewing that. We're also going to put out a show. I want to talk about a bit of boxing. Um,
Yep. Yep.
we need to give our previews on Tyson Fury and
Yep. Correct.
Dillian White. In a sold out Wembley. It's
Did you
gonna.
see the Did you see the face off between Tyson Fury and Dillian White? It was so good. Apparently, Dillian White did a John Cena. Tyson Fury could see him in that face off. But no, you're right. You're right. We definitely have to. I think if you guys remember at the start, we said it's not about MMA. It's all combat sports, and we haven't really had any massive boxing fights announced, and now we got Tyson Fury, the heavyweight champ, coming back. Yep, we'll definitely keep an eye out for that episode as well. And I also quickly want to touch on something outside of fighting, but involves a fighter in Cain Velasquez and what he's going through. Obviously, it's very unfortunate what he had experienced, and our support as part of this MMA community. We support him and we stand by him, and hopefully justice prevails, and we hear some good news on his end. Um, yeah, and some exciting episodes to look forward to. The boxing episode, the preview episode. Yeah, what do you say, CT?
Yep. No, it's been fun. Like we said, the shows are going to continue to come thick and fast. As fights, get made, we'll
Yeah.
put out little reactions. There's another, you mentioned the Chandler El Kukui matchup. There's also Rob Font and Keita Vera, um,
Oh wow!
which has been made today
Oh wow! I
as
missed
well.
that. That's fantastic. That's a massive fight. It's a
Yep.
massive fight for Cheeto. I'd love to watch
Yep.
that fight. Yeah, I'm excited. Yeah, yeah, that's good.
Yeah.
Damn.
So yeah.
CT with
Yep.
the goods. CT breaking fight news. Have you joined the UFC, CT? You keep
Look,
it a secret.
well, I think we hope we continue to do this, and with the UFC, they've got to do a card in Australia.
Yeah,
Let's put that out there, because our borders are open,
yeah,
and what do you say? I think as we get into the months, we get closer to September, October, November.
yep, yeah,
They're they're usually the months we host an event.
yeah, 100%. And look, Dana White or anyone in the UFC who's got any kind of sway or can take this news, if you're listening, come down to Australia, specifically Melbourne, because we're in Melbourne. But look, anywhere in Australia. But look, you got fight fans here as good as anywhere in the world, right? People have taken up to mixed martial arts really well, right? It's got a very good reception. A lot of fight fans. You can pack up, you can pack stadiums here, right? You got a lot of Australian, New Zealand talent that you can pack the cards with, right? So now's the time. Come down to Australia. Put up some good cards, and we'll be there. We'll be there ringside like we were last time. Last time we were fans, but this time we'll cover it. So looking forward to that. Let's, like you said, let's put it out in the universe and let's hope it comes into fruition.
Yep. Yeah, absolutely, DJ. And with that said, this brings us to the end of our episode 6. Look out, like we said, for the next. And until next time, that's a tap.
And from all of us, that's a wrap. Catch you later, guys.
Yep. Peace. Be well.